Hello, Gaslands fans. This is Donutrunner coming from Mars, where the women are purple and the fields are red. I was looking at the Gaslands Facebook page and saw that a lot of you had interest in a Gaslands podcast. And I thought, hey, why not? Let's give it a chance. So I thought I'd start off with maybe how I found out about Gaslands, maybe talk about terrain a little bit, talk about some Gasland resources that you could use to, build your cars and parts, a little bit of terrain, and then, I'll close out with, is this something people really want? Maybe a few faction highlights, perk talk throughs, car videos, maybe. I don't know. Just start somewhere, move forward. So let's start off with first on how I found out about Gaslands. I was looking at Warhammer, of course, Games Workshop. It's where I primarily started, big orc fan, who isn't, shout out to Death Skulls. Blue cars, steal it, paint it. Now it's mine. So sucks to be you. And then I saw a few people posting cars, Speed Freaks had just come out. And I like car mayhem, especially if there's orcs involved. But then I realized, orcs are cool, but televised post-apocalyptic vehicle mayhem. Let's do that. So, I bought a few Hot Wheels. I bought a few more. And then a few more. And now I have a huge cardboard box full of them. But hey, just, more projects. So, I picked up the Blue Book from Mike Hutchinson and brought it to work, showed it to a few guys, and we've been playing for about a year. It could be a little bit longer than that. And got two of my buddies really into it. Played it at my few shops a few times, and then been playing ever since. It's gotten a little out of hand with the terrain and the cars, and then I love it. People love it. I like hosting it. I never have a bad time, even when I'm losing. I just like watching other people lose too. It's not about winning like most war games. It's about having a good time and just laughing about all the craziness that happens. Gaslands Refueled came out. A few new factions. Fell in love with one of the new factions. Love my old faction, but Maxine's pretty cool. But Warden, still one of my favorites. Like I already said, played 40K for a while. It's fun, but having to produce such a mass quantity of miniatures compared to making, 3 cars and having movement be a lot easier is pretty dope. Again, I was talking about my favorite faction. It has to be Warden. Warden's really fun. I like Battle Hammer. I like Aggression. Badass. It all works together. I never feel like my cars have a very specific role with Warden. I feel like it's more of a broad and sweeping, do I want explosions? Do I want rams? Do I want light, close skirmishers that hit and then pull away and lose hazards? Do I like being able to move my hazards to other cars? One of the first subjects I want to go over is Intro to Gaslands, like terrain, how skulls could be super useful. Do I need a playmat? What should I build for my first cars? What should I run for my first cars? I'm going to introduce it to my friends. What should I demo? So, first I'm going to start off with terrain. Terrain is pretty awesome. And it can be pretty time consuming, but it doesn't have to be. You can just go with rocks, walls. You could even use like Jenga pieces. Seen a lot of posts about painting Jenga pieces as Jersey barriers, which is pretty simple. Insulation foam's not hard to work with. You don't really need a wire cutter initially. You can just use like a box knife, shape it how you want, and then paint it up as need be. So that's just some of the first topics I'm going to be going over. So terrain can be what really sets the mood of the game, as much as it doesn't have to be, right? It can just be a few books that you have around when you're getting started. That's how I started, with just a few Hot Wheels and some office supplies, or books. But as you move on, you're going to want more of you're going to have cars that are painted. They're going to start to feel out of place, and books aren't as cool as rusty barrels or big piles of skulls or wrecked cars or missiles or big old skeleton hands that come out of the ground, part of your battle arena, and really set the mood of Crash Derby or Car Mayhem Arena. So some of the first pieces I used were 40K related, because I already had them around. I've been playing the game for a while and I have a lot of terrain, but some of the terrain just doesn't scale well, like big old doors that Space Marines could fit through. Regular people driving Hot Wheel sized cars aren't going to be going through these big ass doors. So I started off with cargo containers, some of the Necromunda new bulkheads with the release of the new game, and then that worked for a while, and then started making other stuff. Like I found these angels at a dollar store, painted them up gold, put them on a cobblestone insulation foam base, painted them up like cobblestone. I found some toys like plastic satellite at the Goodwill down the street, which is also a good resource for cars. Then I got some scale shipping containers, painted those up, used those a lot. I also took a old cardboard oatmeal container, added some hot glue for like weld lines, rusted that up, put some posters on it of factions in the game, and I used that a lot. And that's just some examples of terrain that you can make. Some universal things you should use that fit both worlds, or you could use in multiple war games if that's your fancy. If you play a lot of skirmish games or small things like Kill Team, anything like that, I use walls. Walls always seem to scale really well, as long as you don't put anything in there like skulls to scale or like barrels that are the wrong scale. Barrels also scale pretty well, but if they have like parts on them that people would operate, that could really set off the size of the scale, as well as junk, just plastic bits, pieces of trash. You can paint them up as whatever you want, as long as you pile them up and they don't look like what they used to be. Use a lot of sand around them and just make scatter terrain that makes it so that the cars have to operate around each other. Another thing, which I haven't really incorporated yet, but is definitely in the rules for Gaslands, is explosive terrain. Red barrels. Who hasn't seen a red barrel in a video game, right? If you hit the red barrel, it goes boom, does more damage to your car. And then blast. Blast can give you hazard tokens and cause you to, spin out of control, or you could hit that barrel, do a little bit of damage, and give yourself some hazards and battle hammer the crap out of someone. Who knows? So I want to make some missiles at some point, whether that be out of markers or some old metal tubings I have. But just picture driving your car around and then, oh, there's a big old missile. Better dodge that. Skulls are pretty cool. I find that a lot of my 28mm skulls could still work in the Gaslands universe. I mean, why wouldn't there be a few giants or giant mutants like Fallout running around and people killing them and use them as trophies? Not everything has to be exactly to scale. The rule of cool always wins. And skulls aren't hard to acquire. You can get them off of any of your buddies who might war game. There's a bunch of resources online that you can buy skulls from. I mean, just eBay skulls, and you'll probably find like 100 pack for like $10. Another thing I want to point out is start small, go big. I mean, it makes sense to buy some resources to work on your projects and have some left over. But I find that the more I amass in my hobby, the more I get overwhelmed. The more I have too many projects and not enough time. A lot of people who are playing, some are kids, some are adults. Some are, older adults like me, who don't always have enough time. They have, family commitments they have to get done. And projects are fun, but sometimes you just don't finish them all. So, start with like one faction or cars that don't have a faction, and then, make some terrain, make some markers, do what works for you. There's a lot of little counters that need to be managed in Gaslands, like spawn points and hazards and flame tokens. However you want to do your dashboards. So just start a project, finish that project, move on to the next one. The next topic I want to talk about is my experiences demoing. I think I've played 2-3 games minus the intro to my buddies, who we all kind of learned the game together. First one was, I think, 10 people in the game, 5-on-5. And I only did 10 cars, so each person got whatever faction they wanted. This is back in the Blue Book when we had TX 1, 2, and 3. So each person got one car, 35 cans, anything that was in the time extended, which is now part of Gaslands Refueled, minus a few things, of course, because it needed to be tuned. But one car, 35 cans, any faction, and then we did a 5-on-5 with mixed factions with one respawn each. And I think it was a little overwhelming for the new guys. They didn't really know what was going on. I felt more like I was playing through 5 other people, the new people who haven't played, because there was 2 people on my team who knew what was going on, and then I think 3 guys on the other team who knew what was going on. So it was only like 4 people who didn't know, but me and my buddy were just helping them out, and they were just doing whatever we were saying. So it ended up being like I was playing 5 different cars. So if I had to do it again that day, if I could take a time machine and go back, I probably would have just done no factions with just 25 cans with whatever body they wanted, whatever weapons they wanted that could fit the build slots, and then move on from there. The respawns were cool because it made it so that no one was like left out after a while, but it was fun. I don't want to say that it wasn't fun. We had a grand old time. A lot of car mayhem. We had used some of the new terrain we had. We also played on like a 6x4 map, which is huge for Gaslands. I switched to 4x4 because it was just too much space. But it also counteracts with the fact that I tend to use a lot of terrain because I just like the idea of, not driving over big open plains and having to find someone to shoot or interact with, because Gaslands is all about hitting cars with weapons, with other cars, with terrain. So yeah, again, I wouldn't use audience votes. I wouldn't have used perks. Just cars with machine guns, with droppers, and go for it. We demoed another game the second time, and it was less formal. We didn't set it up beforehand. We didn't invite anybody. We just kind of posted it and went, and it ended up just being 2 randoms who joined in, and we did the same thing, but this time it was less people, so it was not a 2v2. It was just we all went up against each other. We created this King of the Hill thing where there was a terrain piece in the middle, and whoever stayed the closest to the middle of the terrain got more points. It ended up just being monster trucks because 3 people were playing monster trucks, and then one guy played a car, and that car just got destroyed first round, got harpooned in, knocked around, pile drived, and then he tried to respawn later on, and it happened all over again. So it ended up just being Monster Truck King of the Hill, which was a lot of fun. Monster trucks were fun because you can drive over people, you can knock them around, and they look cool on the table. And then there was another time we did a demo, and we ended up having enough people this time that we split it up among two tables. We played Saturday Night Live for the first time, which ended up being super fun, but we did the rules all wrong. And the end of the other table was my buddy leading the death race, and he plays a lot of Idris. And every time I looked over, the same car was wrecked, and then we respawn a new gate and wrecked and respawn another gate. One of the guys was just spinning out at the front starting line and having a great old time just spinning out and not doing anything. So I've never had a bad time demoing. I'd very much recommend understanding the rules before you just demo it, because there's a lot of small things that are intricate, like smash, right? If you smash into someone, if it's a smash on smash, it's two hazards. Anything else is one hazard. And for the longest time, we weren't doing that. And then, blast being on explosions, causing hazards, that wasn't happening. So explosions didn't seem as good. And it wasn't causing enough mayhem, I feel, for what it was. Next, I want to talk about playmats. Playmats, for me, before I get into it too much, right? Gaslands is better on a detailed board, and you don't have to go and make a board with just installation foam. Playmats have really changed wargaming, in my opinion, which is if no one's experienced them before, playmat is this giant mouse pad like thing, and you put it down, it's got detail on it, and it really adds to the motif of the game. It gives it a feeling of an actual setting, and then you just have to put terrain on top of it. I've seen playmats go for anywhere from 40 upwards to 120, and you don't need too big of a playmat. I find that 4x4 works best for up to 4 players. Anything higher than that, you might need to go bigger. But if you're playing more than 4 people in a game of Gaslands, I would recommend just playing 2 separate games, unless you are going to stick to one car each. So there's some playmats that are made of the neoprene, like the mouse pads. Then there's some that are just printed on a fabric. You can lay those out. Those are pretty cheap. But I've seen some people who don't buy the pre-made. They just get a bed sheet and then hit it with some spray paint, give it some effects, like a metal effect or stone, mason work or marble. And that works well for some people. It's easy to take care of. You lay it out and then pin it to the table and then just go for the game. So next topic I want to talk about is some resources you can use. So some of the resources I use, of course, are, Hot Wheels and Matchbox cars. Anything I can find at, Walmart. You can go to Goodwill, get some cars there. Any thrift shop will do. I also found a few cars when I was at the secondhand store for a baby consignment shop, because had a kid recently, and then Gaslands rears its ugly head and you find cars there, and now you're stocking cars from secondhand shop that's for kids. The rabbit hole just gets deeper and deeper. Some other resources that you can have, there's on the Facebook page, there's a guy called Ken Overby who sells a lot of resin parts. Resin parts are cast in pretty good quality, and I won't spoil it for you if you haven't encountered it yet, but finding Ken Overby on the Gaslands Facebook page and the experience of finding him is hilarious and enjoyable. So I won't spoil that too much for you, but go ahead and give that a try. Then there's recently there's the North Star figures. Hopefully I didn't butcher that, but they're started to sell implements of Carnage Sprue, which anyone who's played, any miniature games, again, I come back to 40K, having plastic miniatures that you can just add to your Hot Wheels. Most weapons are on the sprue. There's motorcycles on the sprue, which before this, there was only a few opportunities to get motorcycles, and I won't spoil which place I was getting them for before North Star, but it's really smooth, but there's only one of them, one type, and variation is key in life. It's the spice of life. But the North Star sprues are pretty high quality. I ended up getting like 4 or 5 for myself, and well, 6, but I gave some to my buddy because I didn't expect 6 to come when I ordered 3. And then you can get more Hot Wheels. You know, who doesn't want more Hot Wheels? Some Hot Wheels have massive engines on them, but the cars aren't necessarily the greatest cast. So you can cut those cars up, add the engines to other things. Some Hot Wheels come with weapons. You can cut those off, add them to vehicles you want. Another good resource is Ramshackle Games. This guy was making resin miniatures for a while. I was looking at some of his stuff for orcs for a long time, but I didn't really pull the trigger. And then I always saw those 20 millimeter bikes on there, and I loved them, but I didn't really have a need for them, you know. And then Gaslands came around, and they're great. They're not the highest of detail, but they really fit the Gaslands motif, and you can get them for pretty cheap. And he also started selling like upgrades for armor and parts, and like come with like little barrels and fuel canisters and weapon parts, and they just look really good on cars that have been kicking around in the wastelands, you know, smashing each other up. Really fits it, and you can just stick some of those parts on, paint up the parts, and if you hit them right, just with the right amount of paint and not hit the paint, actual paint, like stock paint on the Hot Wheels car, you can get a pretty good effect with them, and they're not expensive. And another resource that you could use, I believe, I don't want to butcher it, but I believe it's pronounced Sill Designs, and he 3D prints all of his parts. Makes really cool wheels, started making some weapons, engine blocks you can put on your car. I got all the wheels that he produced a while back, and I like adding them to like some of my bone shakers, and they really create like a treaded tires, which you can get on some real riders with Hot Wheels, but it's just easy to not have to search out the wheels on the Hot Wheels, and just boom, pop them off the sprue, put the frame on, and then, or the hubcap, and then just put the wheel on the car and go with it. Another one is Anvil Industries. I think they just bought the parts from Autokill, or maybe they were producing them for Autokill and they just added them to their shop. But they have a bunch of high-end resin parts, which, you know, they got blowers, they got wheels, they got weapons, and they all look so great. I bought a big box of them, but I gotta find where they all went. But rockets, they got speakers. The only thing they really lack is people. I saw a few people. There's also Mad Cars. They make really good resin riders and crew. I think they make a few bikers now. So that's just some resources that I like to use for my Gaslands games. So next we're going to go over is some of my closing statements. First of all, is this something people are interested in? Is this something you want to hear more of? You know, I enjoy talking about Gaslands, but am I not rhythmic enough? Is this interesting? How could I mix it up to make it, you know, more enjoyable? What would people be interested in? Do you want faction highlights? Do you want perk talkthroughs? Do you want to hear about interactions, previous games that I've played? If there's enough, do we want to do car videos, like me making cars? Maybe a few playthroughs of the game. I'd like to do Let's Plays. I just don't know the logistics of it, how expensive it would be to do. Before I close out any of these statements, I would like to say thank you so much to Mike Hutchinson for making such a fun game, providing free DLC for the first year, and then rolling it all into a new book, adding Rams, putting out new factions, and just making something that's just so wholesome and fun in a world where war games can just be so bloated, full of rules, and not really feel like you're having too much fun playing something, whereas I can just drop down a few cars and have a blast with my buds, you know? So with all that, go out there, get some cars, get your ticket to Mars, and come be up here with me up on the big old red planet. Signing out.